Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of SPEARTIPZ. This is our faction guides for Fire and Jade, the 2024 Age of Sigmar 4th edition Spearheads season. I don't know what we're calling it.
We don't know what the next one is.
We don't know what the next one's going to be. It's the first time I've ever done this. But we want to do faction guides. We want to do it in a certain way. So we're going to call this SPEARTIPZ. It's basically, if you were going to start playing the Spearhead, we're going to try and go through all of them over the course of the year. What would our advice be, thoughts be after playing them, sort of like overview be? And we have pretty much all these Spearheads covered, but we're starting with the ones that were at Spearfest, and I'm joined today by Mike Loudon. Hey, to talk about the Bleak Host.
The Bleak
Nurglist.
Host, yes.
Yeah, this is a cool box. And so the format we're going to go through for doing these is we're basically going to start in the order that you would do this to play a game. So from buying the box, building it, through deploy, like what kind of forces, or understanding the forces that you have, into the pre-battle sequence, the initiative roll, battle tactics, and then our closing thoughts on playing them. So doing this temporally. So starting off with building the box, you get quite a bit of stuff in this box. It's kind of like the Ogre Kingdoms one, where you get a pretty sizable collection of Nurgle miniatures. So what comes in the box?
So you get 10 Plague Bearers,
Yep.
which is the same sprue that's been around forever. You get the Spoilpox Scrivener, and then you've got your 5 Blight Kings and your 2 Puscoil Blight Lords.
And it's divided up slightly differently from the way they are in Warhammer Age of Sigmar's pitch battles, where normally it's 2 Blight Lords or in a unit, but you get 2 units of 1 instead, and it's 2 units of 5 of the Plague Bearers, as opposed to having 1 big unit of 10.
Yeah.
So what did you find about building them? Was there anything that was in the instruction book? Like, was there anything that you was like, should I build it this way? Should I build it that way? Because the Spirit in general is just like, don't worry about what the miniatures have, because these are the rules. Did you have any like moments where you thought maybe I'll keep it like this or keep it like that?
No, this one's pretty straightforward. The like there's a bunch of arm options and stuff for the line of the
Like
Plague Bearers.
Plague Bearers.
There's a bunch of arm options. Yeah, basically each of the Blight Kings can be built in at least 2, maybe 3 ways if they've got like the bell or anything. But there's no reason not to just go with what you think is the coolest.
Yeah.
There's really nothing, like no big choices that you're making. I built like the full command group for the basic dudes, Plague Bearers, because I could. It doesn't matter in this game.
And if you want to play pitch battles later on, you have them built that way.
Yeah, might as well, right?
So you're going to build what? You're going to build 1 standard, 1 musician, and 1 champion.
That's it for them. And then you can build the dude with the big bell and the dude with the banner in the Blight Lords as well. Because you might as well, and they're 1 of 5. One in every 5 models can have that. I think in Age of Sigmar anyway. So you might as well.
And the instructions that you got in the Spearhead box included how to build those, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, everything was in there. So no real challenges or decisions to make there, other than I think this looks the coolest. Cool.
And if you follow along, you're going to have all the options in pitch battle. I think that's the important distinction. That's kind of why we're calling this part out in SpearTips is the instructions in the book they won't fool you into making it in a way where you're missing something out basically if you start playing pitch battles, which is great. It's just a smart way of doing it. All right, so then let's talk about the forces themselves, because man, you have some pretty killy stuff, but you also have a really pillowy leader, which I like. I like that, like the options. Unlike, I think the one that's probably goes the hardest is the Ogre Kingdoms, where like the Ogre Kingdoms, their boss is not a pushover. However, your boss is slightly squishier. He's more of a support piece. Let's talk about him. He's your hero and your leader.
Yes, the Spoilpox Scrivener is not amazing. So move 4 is consistent everywhere except for the flying guys.
You are move 4 the faction except for your Blight King who flies. Goes 8.
And flying 8 is not fast for flying.
But it's not nothing in Spearhead. That's a super
true.
fast model in Spearhead.
That's true. 5 up save, 5 up ward, and 5 health is not, again, going to keep him around for very long.
Nope.
He's got a ranged attack, which requires him to be within 7 inches, that you don't really want to be. And he's got a good enough melee attack, but not really. Like 3 attacks, 4s, 3s, rend 1, 2 damage. Like you don't want this guy doing anything but hanging out near the surviving unit of Plague Bearers.
His job is to jack up the Plague Bearers and generally be protected by them as long as he can.
Yeah, he can give them either +1 attack or +1 to their save rolls in your hero phase until your next turn.
And it will last if he dies. So that effect will keep going. If he dies somewhere in between there until your next hero phase, they'll keep that +1 or +1.
Yeah.
And also, it is worth noting that his shooting attack works in combat. So he does have it
Yes.
as it actually ups his melee ability a little bit if you think about it, because even when he's engaged, he can do a shooting phase attack, and then he can also do a fight ability later on.
in your turn. So that would require him to still be in combat,
Which we don't want.
But
it can be a pocket ability where
Yeah.
he's slightly more dangerous, especially if he's fighting somebody else that doesn't want armor.
a little bit of pocket sand in there. But that's really it. Like, he is.
Let's talk about the Plague
Squishy.
Bearers next then,
Yeah.
because his job supporting role for them kind
Yeah.
of revolves around these guys.
All right, so these are your squishy tanks.
You get 2 units of 5.
2 units of 5, 1 at the start of the game, 1 comes down turn 3, anywhere not within 6 of the opponent, so you can teleport them right into the middle of the board if you
Just
want
drop
to.
onto the ground.
Yep, they are. So they're good for the sneak attack, but they've got the -1 to hit for shooting attacks, which is pretty niche in this game, but it can be handy. 2 health.
It's a good thing I never shot them.
Yeah, never bothered to kill one.
No, I shoot Vikings and tower gangs are way scarier.
Yeah. 2 health, 6 up save, 5 upward. So, as I said, they're not super durable either. And their attack is 1 attack that hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, but does do crit mortal for their 1 damage.
Yeah, so ignore armor saves if they roll a critical roll to hit, which is pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why the +1 attack from the Scrivener,
can put them up to 10.
it doubles their damage output. It
It's-
doubles their
yeah.
chances of getting 6s.
It's
from
not
rolls,
nothing.
too.
And the 6s are then going to give, well, we'll get into their
Or
the
cycle,
faction
they're in the
abilities,
battle
yeah.
troops would be after we do forces here.
Yeah. But that's really them. They're there to stand on objectives and be somewhat threatening sometimes.
Interestingly, as they are kind of like your line unit in the Spearhead, they don't have reinforcement.
Yeah.
And they don't have reinforcement for a reason, because there is some stuff later on that we'll find out when we do our battle pre-battle stuff with enhancements and regimental abilities where they can come back. But like, you get another unit of 5 later on, so that kind of builds reinforcement in, but it's never until turn 3. So like, if you're gonna keep your Scrivener alive, these guys kind of need to last a little bit longer than normal.
Yeah.
All right, then there's all the kings and lords. These are the real heroes of this list.
Yeah. So the putrid blight kings, I think, are your damage output. They're 4 attacks. So this is your 5 infantry. They get 4 attacks each on 3s and 3s. Rend 1, damage 1. Again, it ties back into the faction ability. Later on, they get to roll an additional die at the end of any turn to shield bash people to death if they have low health.
Yeah. And they're tanks. They have 3 wounds each and a 3+ armor save.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing worth noting is both the Plague Bearers and the Blight Kings only have a control score of 1.
Yeah.
So they only count as a single model ever each for holding objectives, which means you have a very low control scoring entire army here.
Yeah.
You're all about killing people off the objective. You're not about swarming and holding and swarming and holding.
Yeah,
So they're a
it's
very
gonna be
grindy
rough.
unit, but they don't score as well. They got to kill everybody off of it.
Yeah. And 5 upward save on everything in the faction as well.
Yeah.
So good. They've got that extra layer of durability, which can come in handy, especially if you can roll 5s.
If you can roll 5s,
It's pretty good.
It's just important to roll 5s. Now, there's another important thing about these guys being 5 models, which we'll talk about later on.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting that having a super elite unit that's 5 models in Spearhead makes one of the battle tactics cards incredibly valuable.
So much better.
Incredibly valuable. And Relentless Attacker is where if you roll, it's end of any turn, so it's your turn and my turn.
Yep.
If you roll over the health stat for each of the models in your unit that's in combat, you get to roll a die. If it's over their health stat, they take a mortal wound. So any 1 wound infantry can just get plowed over by these guys at the end of the turn, which can be massively game changing for their control score, right?
Yeah.
So like things like clan rats, night goblins, like any of these guys who are just a single wound holding an objective, they can actually clear a zone pretty fast as long as the unit's healthy.
Yeah.
And you have all 5 still alive.
Yeah, 20 attacks is pretty great.
20 attacks, and then also potentially just 5 more dead guys on 2+ at the end of the turn if they're all 1 health.
Yeah.
So ghouls, goblins, anything that's a single health stat, Cities of Sigmar guys just get like completely Kool-Aid manned off the objective.
They don't like it. They don't like it.
Yeah. And then our big boys, the Blight Lords.
Yeah, Puscoil Blight Lord. Here's my movement 8 piece, and he's got a 4-up save and 8 wounds.
Oof.
With a control of 2. Still got that 5-up ward and fly, which is very nice to have.
Does mean he can be seen over the large terrain pieces, though.
Yeah.
So the large terrain pieces only block line of sight to stuff on either side if they're not a monster or fly.
Yeah.
And you are a fly, which means they can... Literally, you are a fly.
I am.
It can be seen over the walls.
But it also means I can charge over a screen and hit something squishy in the back if I can get there.
And charge over those walls, too.
Yeah, exactly. So, pluses and minuses to that, but I
8
think
health.
mostly plus.
Yeah, they're not quite as tanky as the Blight Kings. They only have a 4+ save instead of a 3+ save.
Yeah.
But they still have that 5+ board.
Yeah, they've got impact hits on the charge, rack and ruin. On a 2+, you inflict D3 mortal wounds when you charge with them.
That can be really great for just finishing something off an objective, too. Something that's like on low health.
And then his attacks are statted really for horde clearing more than anything.
Yep.
Three attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound. Ren 2 is really nice, but only 1 damage.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fly gets 6 more attacks that hit on 4s, wound on 2s, and do 1 more damage. So all 1 damage.
Disturbingly named weapons, too. It's mouth parts. With the mouth parts of the fly. Super disturbing.
Do not like.
Yeah, so they're not like quite as tanky as the Blight Kings themselves, but these guys can get almost anywhere.
Yeah.
And then get a charge off. Really good at hunting other rival like light heroes, or like small wound count units, like recycling units, like a 5-man unit with 1 wound each.
Yeah.
I think some of the Daughters of Cain units are like that, where they only have a single health. And they're like a 5-man unit of witch elves. Just get cleared off by that guy almost instantly.
Yeah, and you just take him out.
All right, so that's what we're playing with here. Forces. You got kind of an elite amount of army, but you don't get to play with all of it because let's get into battle traits. So what's your primary battle trait?
So the primary battle trait is the Infectious Host, which is what keeps one of my Puscoil Blight Lords and one of my units of 5 Plague Bearers off the board until turn 3. And then on my turn 3 in the movement phase, I can deploy them anywhere on the battlefield
with demonic
outside
summoning.
of 6 with demonic summoning. So, required reserves. Probably good for the balance of the game. I love how they have that.
Best deployment rules, though. It's better than the Ogre deployment rules because they have to be near a table edge. You just show up wherever you want.
Yeah. The Stormcast get the anywhere.
The lightning strike.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's a really, really nice to take this slow team and put them wherever you want them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's they don't participate in half the game, so nice to get them in there. I also have got in my battle traits, I've got diseased, where anytime you're rolling an attack roll and you get a 6, you receive a disease point up to a maximum of 7, which at the end of the turn, any turn, you can spend as many of them as you want if you're in combat with an enemy unit, and on a 4+ you deal a mortal wound. So
and it's just like at anywhere that you're in combat, basically, you can start spending disease points, which is very clutch.
Which can be. Had several opportunities to be clutch that it failed at too.
They can also not be clutch.
It can also be bad.
But when they have the opportunity to just like finish a unit off you didn't quite kill, you're basically adding to the damage output of all of your units, and it's all mortal. Yeah. Which means unless your opponent has a ward save, you're just clearing off stuff that's even super heavy armored.
And you can do it. You could do your shield bash thing with the kings, and then be like, oh, you've still got a couple of wounds left. Okay,
I finish you off with the disease points.
And you don't have to spend them all, but there's not really much reason not to unless you're not in combat.
Earn them as fast as you can. Earn them and spend them as fast as you can. Just get rid of them. Get these units cleared off.
For sure.
All right, so those are our forces. Those are their battle traits. So you're going to start with your game's going to have a single Blight Lord. You're going to have 5 Plague Bearers, 5 Blight Kings, which is like the meteor army, and your character, your Scrivener. That's a ton of wounds on the table. That's 10 wounds worth of Plague Bearers, 15 wounds worth of Blight Kings, another 8 with a Lord. So you're looking at 33, 38, almost 40 wounds worth of guys. Yeah. But only in 12 models. That's a huge wound count.
It's pretty crazy.
Even when you're looking at some of the bigger like model count armies like the Skaven and the Night Goblins. I think the Night Goblins are higher, but the Skaven are still only 32, 40, 50 maybe. Like you almost have as many wounds as the Skaven get for the entire game. Yeah. Except for the recycling units. Yeah. That's a lot of wounds.
And then 18 more drop in.
All right. So let's talk about pre-battle. So pre-battle, we have basically 2 big things that happens. The first is we got to roll to see who's the attacker and defender. Yeah. And that's a big choice for you because you really don't want to go first. You're so slow. You're so slow.
It's a tough one because I really don't want to go first, but I don't want to play on Garan either.
You don't want to play on Garan? So why is that?
So the Garan board, if you look at all the twists on it, it's got too many that interfere with ward saves or give you ward saves. I already have them. My opponent can take mine away. I don't want that. Yep. All I have is the meat that my army is made up of, and Garan is either giving more meat to my opponent. There's a little bit of healing that'd be nice in it. A couple of extra, couple that add a victory point to certain zones. But my opponent's probably better at getting to specific zones
There's
than
also
I am.
a kill scoring twist, which you like to kill. Like your job is killing units.
But that's in action.
In action, so I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting out of Garand, there's not only is there reasons you don't want to be in Garand, there's reasons you want to be in action for additional scoring.
Because I want a kill score. I want there to be an objective that it's hard to kill people on. I want one that just doesn't belong to anybody.
Yep.
I really think that the action thing is important. And going first kind of sucks. I get to move up onto the center objective, hold 3. Hopefully I've got a couple of points in my hand, but I'm really looking at like a 3 or 4 point turn 1.
Picking defender means you get to pick action, which is a big deal for you. Got
exactly.
it. Okay, so then let's move on to regimental abilities, because you have 2 here, 2 choices.
Yep.
And so let's say because you've picked Garan, either of these might go up and down in value. The first one's Locus of Fecundity. It's once per phase during your hero phase only. Pick a unit and they heal D3.
Yeah.
So just having some hero phase stuff. It's not tied to your hero either. It just happens in the hero phase. So you can do it even after the Scrivener's dead. Just pick something, they heal D3.
Yeah, extra meat on my meat.
Yeah. And then the other one is Infested with Wonders. And this is the opposite. Whenever something dies, you can roll pick an enemy unit within one of that unit and roll a die on a 4+ to take immortal damage. So you've got either keep growing back every hero phase, or when you die on a 4+, maybe something takes a mortal wound. How do you feel about those two?
I think the right call is almost always going to be Locus of Fecundity.
Yeah.
If I had an enemy that had a lot of 1 wound models and not a lot of recursion, then I might go with because if you're just going to alpha strike me really hard and really fast, I might want to do the killing back.
But you're a
more
ward save
than
army.
I care.
I can't see a time that ever is good. Like, because you're a tanky army in general. You're not losing a lot of models super fast. Like, that's a great ability on something like Skaven, you know what I mean, or goblins, where like if they die, they're doing damage back. It's not really a great ability on an army with a ward save and great armor, right?
I think there's probably a matchup where I want that, but not.
I can't think of one.
Yeah,
I honestly can't think of one.
I'd have to.
Where anything's going to alpha strike you. Like if someone sticks you in Grand and gets rid of your ward save, maybe that's a time where you'd want to have that. But also, I'd just like to be able to bring my guys back to life.
Yeah,
like have my big because in particular. Everyone's multi-wound, so healing D3 is always going to be worth it on somebody.
Yeah.
Your Blight Lords and your Blight Kings are like 3+ wounds, 3 to 8.
Yeah.
So having a heal, I think, is super important.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing is because it's only your hero phase, this happens 4 times per game, not 8. So it's not like one we're going to talk when we talk about the Sylvanet, that it will be the other one that goes up today, where I get to do it every single at a turn, even back and forth.
Yeah.
So... yeah, I think you're right. I think taking Locus of Fecundity is probably the choice here, no matter what you're playing into or playing against. I can't think of a faction that could alpha strike you hard enough that like negates ward saves where you would want to do 4+ explodes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we go to our enhancements. This is what we're giving the Scriveners. What are our options here?
Well, let's see. We've got Summoner of Plague Bearers, where I can return a slain model to a Plague Bearer unit within 14.
That's at the end of turn.
End of any turn.
So 8 times per game.
Yeah. So that can be useful as long as they didn't. If your opponent's going to wipe them out in one round, that's the only time that I would not heavily consider that.
Well, you double down the chances on turns 3 and 4 because there could be 2 units of Plague Bearers on the table now all of a sudden too.
I've got Gardener of Nurgle, which is in my movement phase. I can on a 3+. I can desecrate an objective and have a 4+ ward save while I'm standing on it until an opponent takes that objective back.
Yeah, so you gooify one of them, and now you're more like resilient when you're standing on it until they take it away from you.
Yeah.
But as long as they can't take it back. Now, this is the value of this one's going to go up and down based on how low your control scores are, right? Your control scores aren't great, so it like taking back an objective from a Blight King or a Blight Lord is not hard. The Blight Lord, especially if he's on it by himself, where he's only, I think, 2. Is he objective control 2 or just 1? He's 2. Yeah, you're just going to walk over with 3 guys and be like, this belongs to me now, you don't get your ward save.
Yeah.
Then we got Pestilential Breath.
Yep, it's another 7-inch range attack, which can be nice. 5 up for a mortal wound on a unit. If you've got a lot of hordes you're facing and you don't think you're going to be able to avoid them, that's the only time I'm taking that. But it's my shooting phase. So.
It's not a shooting attack, though, so it will work while you're in combat, which is nice. It's just pick someone within 7.
Which means he's got both his attacks on.
You're doubling down. Yeah.
Which there are times, but
I would pick that. The reason to pick that would be an army that's very aggressive. If you're playing against like ogres, or you're playing against someone's just running at you headlong, and they're fast enough, there's nothing you can do to stop from charging you. That might be worth doing, especially if they're high armor.
Yeah.
Like Stormcasts are going to get in your grill. There's a
but,
couple of
but they're all
armies where
low
they wanna do
model
it.
count, and it's a 5+ per model. So if I'm doing it to a 3 ogre unit, 1 mortal wound.
Yeah. But Witch Elves, where it's like 5 you know what I mean? Like those are the units
one.
you want to do it against.
Yeah.
And then the last one is only a once per battle in any combat phase.
Gift of Febrile Frenzy. I can add 1 to attack characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly units while they are wholly within 7 of my general.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be, at least it's any combat phase. So if I'm turtled up and my opponent rushes me, then I can add a bunch of attacks to my army.
You can add the only issue to think with that one is you don't have any units that have a greater model count than 5. Not that there are typically those in Spearhead in general, but like adding 5 attacks potentially overall to a unit once per game versus bringing back 8 Plague Bearers over the course of the game, it doesn't rank as high, I think, for me. Which one's the, if you were to rank these, because I don't think there's a right choice here necessarily, because all these might have a place.
Yeah.
I do think that if I was to start my rankings at the bottom, that's the last one. And I think it's once per game. It needs to be really good for me to not put it at the bottom of my choice list.
Yeah, I fully agree. And to have units fully within 7 of the general is not going to be more than 1 or 2 units, best case. So I don't like that one. I think probably Pestilent Breath and Gardener of Nurgle
switch back and forth.
Yeah, they need to have the right situation.
So I'm gonna 3-4, maybe interchangeably.
Yeah, and I'm gonna default to Summoner of Plague Bearers as the one I'm gonna take, unless I've got a really good reason to take one of the other 2.
I think when looking at enhancements, I look at it like this: what is the guy it's going to go on going to be doing? This is a support character, right? So he should have a support enhancement. Nothing that requires him to be close up, like unless he doesn't have a choice. Yeah. And then how often are they going to get to do it for the whole game? Like getting 8 Plague Bearers back over the course of the game potentially, versus one time getting between 1 and 5 attacks. I don't think it's kind of a no-brainer. Like you're always going to have Plague Bearers on the table. There's always going to be a chance that some of them might die. It feels like the ranking thing for me is how often do you get to do it and how relevant is it going to be to that guy's role overall. Yeah. So I do think you're right. I think Locus of Fecundity and Summoning of Plague Bearers, they fit into that guy's like battlefield role really well. That would be my default if I never played against the army I'm playing against. I don't really know what they're going to do, and I've gotten to pick realm or not gotten to pick realm. Those are the ones I'm going to probably go with every single time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that's pre-battle. Let's talk about initiative. So attacker and defender, we already talked about how that's important. Let's talk about terrain.
Yeah.
So if you're the attacker, you're not getting to pick terrain. You're not getting to pick your zone. So if your opponent knows that you don't want to be in Garan, they're probably picking Garan. How important is terrain in either of those realms, you think, for you?
Not super. Like if there's a lot of ranged attacks on the other board, I don't have enough models that I'm hiding. They all need to be doing something anyway. So maybe I can block off one of my objectives from heavy ranged attacks. But mostly it's in my way.
My only thought's the small piece. The small piece and the Scrivener. Being able to put the Scrivener next to Plague Bearers, next to a small piece, right? You're going to get cover, right? You're going to double down on if that Plague Bearer starts to die, you're still going to have cover, but you can see over it. Yeah. So all your line of sight abilities that you need to have will still be able to be triggered off of him.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's my only thought, is that the small piece might matter for like creating a place where the Scrivener is going to start and probably stay for a minute, and it blocks engagement range maybe between him and something too.
Yeah.
The big one, I don't think you super care about.
If I think I'm going second and I'm worried about the strike, then I can keep things. I can keep the big guy behind the wall.
That's the only the plus go Blight Lord,
So that because he can just fly over it, so I can kind of keep him safe from the alpha strike behind the wall if I think I'm going second. Yeah. That's the big.
Yeah. Yeah, those would be the considerations. I think you're right. Is the large piece, where's your Blight Lord going to go? And then the small piece, where's your Scrivener going to go? Yeah. And then we're into battle tactics. Okay, so we're on the draw now. Yeah. We've got I think at least 1 or 2 cards every episode that we're going to look at and be like, this is a really important card for you. Yeah. What's your pick for really important cards if you draw it?
There's nothing more important than call reinforcements in this one. Kings? Yeah, for the Blight Kings, because it's a unit with 5 or more models that have been destroyed. You just get to set up D3 of them. And since these guys don't have normal recursion, they were already hard to get rid of. Yep. They probably did a bunch of damage on the way down. But if you know this is coming up, then you can be a little bit more reckless with them, have them doing the thing they need to do, and then come back and hold an objective or be meat on an objective.
And
or
if you
something.
cycle your cards, you always get into it, right?
Yeah.
So like that's the thing is in Spearhead, there's 12 battle tactics cards. It means if you're burning through your cards every turn, you're either holding on to it so you can play aggressively, or you're cycling your cards to try and get to it, because turn 4 you could have 3 Blight Kings show up. But even one of them is still dangerous and still able to hold an objective pretty decently with a 3+ save and 3 wounds.
Yeah.
It's no joke to have them show up all of a sudden at the end of the game.
Yeah, and then fall back and rally can be good
For them as well,
because
yeah.
you've got 5 models, so you get to roll the 5 dice. You might get to return some models, and
Is it dead models? I think it's only the dead models that
Yeah,
you get to
you-
roll.
I
So you
think
roll for
it's-
whatever your casualties are, but the last guy
yeah,
doesn't take any mortal wounds from falling back all of a sudden, and can get, you potentially get 1 to 2 models back, usually statistically speaking.
yeah,
Rolling 4 dice and a 5+.
yeah.
So-
So best case scenario, they're just so valuable. So anything that lets you, the 2 cards that let you recur them is.
And what's the scoring option off of them that you're giving up? That's my other balance
that's
thing.
true.
I think it's worth giving up almost anything for reinforcements for the Blight Kings. It lets you play with them. It lets you just shove them as far forward as you can, as fast as you can.
Yeah.
What are you giving up for it?
And so you're giving up for fallback and rally. You're giving up Do Not Waver, which is somebody used a fight and none of your units were destroyed, which is
pretty easy for you to score. To be honest.
pretty easy to score. And then for call reinforcements, you're giving up attack on 2 fronts, which is flip 2 enemy objectives.
That one I think is worth getting rid of, because it's really hard for you to take back 2 with your movement stat.
Yeah,
Take
and my
back
low
2 in the
control
same
score
turn.
and
Yeah.
my
So call reinforcements, you're not really giving up anything that you were going to score anyway. The other one you might waver over.
Yeah.
And also might be situational, because your opponent has to do something to get you in combat to make it fall back. But it's a no-brainer. Like giving up attack on 2 fronts for call reinforcements, I think I do it every single time.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, then we're into closing thoughts. So obviously this is a relatively tanky faction. They have a fairly high damage output. They have a lot of mortal wound output potentially between the plague points and the plague bearers having like crit mortal. There's a lot of potential, and you got some enhancements that get some in there too.
Yeah.
You're a pretty aggro, but also relatively durable army. What are your thoughts on them?
I think they're interesting. They're tanky. Their damage output isn't massive. But yeah, I think they're interesting. I think you get to really kind of play that placement game. They feel like Nurgles.
Yeah.
which is probably a good thing. Where it's not about overwhelming your opponent with a pile of super high quality attacks. They are pretty dicey though, because those 5 upwards, like a lot of things are happening on good dice rolls, and a lot of nothing is happening on bad dice rolls.
There is a potential that the RNG is going to screw your plan a couple of times. And your low movement stat also makes you charge roll dependent sometimes.
Yeah.
And a bad charge roll, or even run roll dependent.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have a plan that depends on you rolling a 3+ for a run, and you just can't get that 3+ for a run, and then you've lost a point of scoring.
Yeah.
And it puts you behind. That's happened to you in the games we played. So I do agree. I think that the way that gets balanced is because you have almost absolute control of your model placement turn 3 with 2 units.
Yeah.
You can just dump control onto back objectives, and your damage output's high enough that there's probably a big chunk of the opponent army taken out turns 1 and turns 2 by just Blight Kings playing recklessly.
Yeah.
Like play with them aggressively and get as much damage out of them as you can. My thoughts on them are pick the right target for the right unit.
Yeah.
Low health, high save units. Those Blight Lords are great with their Ren 2 scythe that going and taking out. Low health, high number units are what you want to send the Blight Kings after.
Yeah.
Right? So things like, again, dropping them into things like Clan Rats and Night Goblins, any of these like 1 health guys. But they're also great at taking out things with a 4+ save and 1 health, right? So things like the Sigmar like soldiery, who have a decent armor save for what they are, but that shield bash just takes them out and like knocks them down. They have like a thing where once you understand what the rock paper scissor I think combo is for picking your unit to fight their unit, you're gonna have a good time playing the army.
Yeah.
And the last thing is my final closing thought: super fun and easy to paint.
Yeah.
Like the messier you paint them, the better they are. So if you're new to Spearhead or new to Warhammer Age of Sigmar, you can get a lot of mileage out of contrast paints and washes with these guys.
Absolutely.
It's super easy to do. I would probably paint these guys by priming them with like Korax white spray, then just doing all the metallics, and then just hitting them with like a combination of different like washes and just being done.
Yep.
And then pick out all the boils with like something orange and yellow or whatever to make them pop like you did. So very beginner friendly, I think, if you know how to handle and quick. Like you get them on table super fast.
For sure. For sure.
I have them in my queue for painting after I do, I think, probably my ghouls next. the Royal Court, and that's gonna be probably all that I do.
I was gonna say that's 2 really hard painting projects in a row.
I know.
Sure.
I'm really struggling right now with painting the Spearhead. I'm really biting it off. So thanks for doing this, man, and thanks for everybody watching our first episode of Spear Tip. And the next one will be on Sylvaneth, which will also be up today. And we'll keep doing these as people come in with their Spearheads armies, and we break down our little faction guides and our thoughts on how to play them.